Hello, this is Max Drake. I want to talk about this Ephemeris, Ephemeris, which I've got here for Wellington, and it's on a specific date. So it's a daily Ephemeris that gives you the sun through to Neptune with the moon in there as well, and it's got a 24-hour at hourly intervals of where all the planets are, as seen from Wellington, as in azimuth and in altitude. So it's not in right ascension or anything like that. So I started off with this, and this was something that I thought I wanted to have. I wanted to be able to email it to myself so that I could open it on my mobile phone, open the PDF and zoom in on a specific part of it. So that was the nice thing with a PDF. If you're in a PDF and you zoom in, and we're going to zoom into maybe 800, you see it doesn't pixelate. Whereas if you'd got an image, all of the text would have pixelated or something like that. So you can move it around, zoom in, zoom out, so you can sort of track which ones that you actually want all the way through there. And you know, if you suddenly think, oh, which line was I on? You can suddenly thinking, oh, I'm on this line here, and then you can sort of zoom into that particular point that you wanted to get where you want. So this video is about the process rather than the finished product, because I still want to add a whole load of other things onto that particular table for my own particular Ephemeris. So I started off with Bing, and I said, Mr. Bing Chat, with AstroPy, because I've been using AstroPy to do some stuff like that, how do I write an Ephemeris? And it kind of came back with, oh, well, use this program. So first thing he actually did was he said, use PyEphem. And I was saying, so he gave me a bit of a code to do it, and I thought, well, okay, then I'll load up that library. So I loaded up the library, and it actually has, here's got Boston, and it's got a latitude and a longitude, and you give it a time and it will compute where Mars is. So I went in and I got that bit of code, and I said, here's that bit of code there, and I actually just put in Wellington coordinates through there. So I'm down in the southern hemisphere, and it said here's the date, so just bang in a date and it'll give me a Mars observation. So I thought, oh, that's cool, so let's just take that, and I want the same thing. So I actually said to Bing Chat, I want the same thing from Wellington, but I want 3 planets, Mars, Venus and Jupiter, but I want hourly intervals. And instead of, if you look at the original one through here, it actually gave the answer in right ascension and declination. I said, no, I want it in altitude and azimuth. So it then goes through and it actually writes all of those things out for me. So if I just run that one there, you will actually see it's given me the altitudes and the azimuth of all of those. So since it's just done it here now, and it's just done date time now, so at this instant when I've run that script, it's generated it through there. So at this point in time, 1829, so that's 5:30, Mars altitude should be -72, so that should be in the ground, and the azimuth should be 154, so around towards the south. So let's just go and check on that. So if we just go and say Mars, and we get Mars, it actually says that the altitude is 20, and sorry, the azimuth is 20 degrees, and the altitude is 20. So I was suddenly thinking, oi, that's completely out. That's not where it's supposed to be, so that's wrong. What's happening? Well, what it's actually doing is it wants to use UTC time. So I was suddenly thinking, well, okay then, let's take this to the next level, baby. So we take it to the next level where we use PyTZ library. So that's Pi time zone library. So what we can actually do is we can say, go and find me the positions of all of those planets at the time from UTC. So that's taken from Greenwich Mean Time at latitude 0, and calculate where all of those are. But then put at the beginning of the table the local time, as in the time that's on my watch as I'm in Wellington, so that I do. So on this one here, I think it writes to a CSV file, so I'm just going to run this file here, and we go and look at that planet data one through here. So here's the time, so it's actually saying it's 1653, so 5, oh, no, sorry, yeah, no. Let's just blow that away. Delete. And Where were we? We were Ephem4. Save, run. Shift run. It's written it. So let's just refresh that. And there's the planet data. So it's at 532. So yeah, 532. And it's saying that Mars azimuth is 20 and its altitude is 20.21. So let's just go and look at that. And it's saying Mars, its altitude is 20 and its azimuth is 2021. Well, it might have gone past, or I might need to refresh this or something like that. So if I do Mars. So anyway, it's in the ballpark of where it should be. So Mars 2030. So if we just go back to what we had there, 2021. So yeah, that was at 32 and it's now, oh no, should be right. So we're definitely in the ballpark of where we should be. So that's good. So we've suddenly got that right. So there's we got that hiccup with it needs to be using Greenwich Mean Time or UTC time to actually plot where the azimuth and altitudes are wherever you are in the world, but you need the local time, which is what I've got on the left hand column through there. So that's quite good. So we've got the data. So the next step is to actually just go through and put all the planets in there. So we can bang all the planets in there and say, okay, then let's have a CSV with that. So this one here will write to current date and then planet data. So if I just run that one there, we've then got one called current date and planet data there. So this is where we've got all of our data in a row. But if I just email that to myself, VS Code actually has this colorizer for a CSV file. It's an added through there. But you would actually just have all of this as white, and it'd be quite hard to read, especially if you're at this tail end of this particular script. So I was only thinking, no, I want it. And you also see how they sort of wave as some of the text is bigger than others, or there's minuses and things. So the columns aren't straight, so there might be a bit of setting up. So it's only thought, well, no, I want that in tabular form, and so it's easier to read. So I came across a video, which was create PDF tables with Python PDF2. And this gentleman here then also writes a class, a table class, that makes it simple to make a table. So it actually has a table title, it puts in the headers, and you can actually get your text through there. So I suddenly thought, that's the bunny, that's what I want. So this is the table class, and on this one here, he's got a whole list, he's got a lot of lists, or he's got a dictionary. So if I run this script here, it comes out with this particular one. So this is a A4 sheet of paper, that is in portrait fashion, and he's run that list in 3 different variations. So he's actually used that list, the first list there, Bob, and he's done 1, 2, 3 of those, and then the last one he's created it using the dictionary. So the last one's with the dictionary, and in that one he's just highlighting the fact that he colorized some of the data. Can't colorize the headers or the thing, but he's just showing these are the variations that you can do. So it's only thinking, wow, this is a really good thing to do. Now inside here, what he's doing is he's calling this file from create table fpdf2. So if we go and look at that table, which you've got to have in the same folder of where you're actually running it to create this one. Sorry, that's create table pdf2. This is the actual class table that has all of these things. Now what I found was I actually came into here and fiddled some of my text size rather than doing it inside of this script through here, where you can actually adjust the things there. I found it was a bit more effective as to what I was doing. I was basically running this first one, which was create the cell width as even, because a lot of them all have the same sort of tabular data. So that one uses this FPDF2 or whatever to actually pull all of that in, and then you can do some adjustments to make it so that you're suddenly thinking, well, actually I want my rows closer together, and I want my columns a bit tighter or something like that, and I want the scale of my text a little bit smaller or something. So that's what I ended up tweaking with and playing with, and I found it speeded up. The actual he talks about it in his video, that this can be a little bit it's a little bit more difficult to actually set up in a way. So he said he's just done that one, and I thought that's handy. I just really want the demonstration of getting it into a PDF and then pushing it out the other end. So I ended up creating the PDF, and even with his particular process, just getting my head around it, it still took me half a day to do that. It actually only took me a couple of hours to actually get the Ephemeris up and running. So I suddenly thought the bit that I thought would be complicated was easy. The bit that I thought would be easy is very, very fiddly. It just to get in the text size, because I had so many rows and I'd really wanted on one sheet that I actually had to reorientate the sheet round. So on my script thing. Now the other thing that I just want to draw your attention to here, I've got a CSV file and it takes lists of lists or dictionaries. Initially I was looking at taking a CSV to a dictionary, and in the end I suddenly thought no, CSV to list of lists. So I found a bit of a script, or I think I asked Bing again, how do I do a list of lists? And it says, oh, how do I change a CSV file? And it said, here's a bit of data, this is how you do it. So I used that and it worked marvelously. It took my CSV data, turned it into a list that then just processed straight into a stuff. So I just added that into part of my script, and wonder, behold, it all worked perfectly. So this is why I'm actually finding Bing Chat quite good, is it does these little snippets. I just want to do this little bit here. How would I do that? Or this is the rest of the script. How would it fit in with that? And it comes up with some very nice solutions. Definitely speeds up my processing of how things are doing. So I've converting it. I've got it to the point where I can actually write a PDF. Now, a couple of things happened along the way. One, when I actually generated this one, it ended up, a very long wide table. So I thought, what I'll do is I'll rerun this script. I think this one gives me the name at the beginning, and I've got. Yeah, so what I ended up doing instead was I started thinking, well, instead of actually having this long CSV, I can actually just break it into 3 separate tables. So I get the Sun, Mercury and Venus, I get the Moon, Mars and Jupiter, and then I get Saturn, Uranus and Neptune in the things, and then I've got the time on the side, and I just put the date at the top. When I came to try and do this in the PDF, it does a title, it does the headers, and it does the data. So therefore I'd actually have to split this data into 3 separate things and write them in 3 separate tables, similar to what he's done here of writing 3 separate tables for that. So we get the first lot, the second lot, the third lot, which is something I could have done. I was just trying to do the process, so at this point in time I could go back and fiddle with that later. I'm not interested at this point in time. So I've got my CSV out, I've got my PDF out at the end of it, and it's readable and it does what I want. I can zoom in, I can get it on thing. So the next part is doing the email. So when I came to do the email, I actually had an email that I used for my API stuff, which actually reads a CSV. Now, since a CSV is a text file, the process that it does for actually using it, it uses this octet stream thing or something like that. Anyway, it works. I don't know how it works, but it works, so that's wonderful. So I just want to draw your attention here to sending emails with Python, with attachments. This is a bit of an issue. Inside, and I find the easiest way of doing it, I've tried several different ways with several different programs, with AutoHotkey, with JavaScript, and with another couple of ones, and with PowerShell and all of those. And this I find is the easier way. Use Gmail, but you don't use your own personal password as what you'd log on to do in the theme. It creates a password, so you can send it via Python scripts and stuff like that. So this video will actually demonstrate how you actually get that password that is done, and then you can generate your own one through here. Now, because I'm doing this video, I want you to be able to take it away and use it yourself. So what I've done in here is that I've got this thing called email inf. So this is a little file, and I'm just going to show an example of this one, and this is one called email inf copy. Basically, I can hide information in this file that you can't see. So I can put my private password into here. I can give you the email files, and you haven't got any of my codes or any of my data through there. So that means it's depersonalized and more generic in a way. So that's one of the things you can do. I just want to step back. Now, when I was actually doing the Ephemeris stuff, one of the things I suddenly thought, oi, you know, there's some really cool things here. What I need is I just need the latitude and longitude, and I need my time zone. That I can actually do this from anywhere. So I suddenly thought, well, you know, my daughter lives in Auckland, so let's do that. So I actually just went out, and then I went and just did Google Maps, and I said she lives in Bombay Hill. Let's just say she lives at this point here. So I can go onto there, right hand click at that particular point, and I think now there we go, and I can go what's here, and it actually gives you the latitude and longitude of a specific location. So you're suddenly thinking, well, I know that's in Auckland, so therefore she's in the same time zone as me. So I thought, oh well, that's really cool. So I can actually just put that information in there, and I can leave my information out, and I can actually make her an ephemeris for where she lives of all the planets through there. So that one works for her. And then I suddenly thought, oh, this is cool. So what I can also do from that is my sister-in-law lives in Hentis Bay in Namibia. So I can actually just get the coordinates of where her house is, and I can actually get the right time zone for that, and I can actually go and run one for her. Save, run, and there it is through there. And there's one for Hentis Bay, and the times of the local times based on them, but it's generated at that. So so I suddenly thought I could actually end up automating all of this and giving everybody daily ephemerises, or I could set it up for a weekly ephemeris or something like that. And if they say I wanted, she's actually Hentis Bay is actually in the southern hemisphere as well. So if somebody was in the northern hemisphere, you could suddenly say, well, where's Polaris? And although Polaris is pretty much up anyway, so you don't need to do that. But if there were certain things that you can see in the northern hemisphere or constellations or things like that, you could give locations to those. So you can actually set up personalized ephemerises for people, and just suddenly saying, well, you know, that's what you want to see. Those are the particular ones that you need to orientate yourself. There you are. That's what's actually happening in your night sky. So it's great. So this then you can say, well, I've set it up for me. Where do you live? And I'll set one up for you, and I can actually automate through there. So we've now got two bits of the story. We're now able to create an ephemeris of a certain number of planets or objects in the sky, etc., etc., etc. We can do it into a table inside a PDF, so that if we email it, you just happen to open it and you can zoom in on the actual PDF, and you can view that inside a mobile phone straight away, and move around to actually see that. So it's easy to read on a mobile. It's not necessarily that easy to read on a mobile phone, but it is easy to read as such. And then the third part that we need to do is to actually be able to automate that. Now, the way that we automate that is that we use task scheduler. So inside the task schedule, I'll actually just delete that one and just say yes, and we'll set one up from scratch. So inside task scheduler, I've created another folder. If you're going to make a file and you want to keep all of your files, like I've got one called Astro, and I keep that. So you click on your folder and then you go create a task. A lot of the times, once you've actually created a task, the best thing to do is export it and then import it again, and you import it again, and then you just modify some of the things, because most of the setups are going to be the same. So on this one here, we're just going to this ABC one through here. We're going to create a new task. We don't create a basic task, we create a task, and we're going to call it Blurgle, and it's going to keep called Blurgle. You need the actions. Now the actions is a new action, is start a program. You used to be able to send an email or display a message. You can't do any of those now. Now the program that we're going to start is in fact the Python program, and then once we've started the Python program, we can then run the script, the Python script that we're going to run. So we've got to go and find out where Python's hidden. Now Python's in a weird place, so if we just type Python inside here, we just use the 3.10 one and stuff, go and open the file location. It takes us to a shortcut. So we then have to go into the properties of the shortcut and find out the target. So there's the target of where Python exe is. So we can get the program that we're going to run is Python, and then the script that we're going to run, I'm just going to go into here. Have we got anything else open? So I'm going to go into, I'm in the backup now, and that's not the one I want. I'm going to go into my downloads one. Is going to be this Ephem one through here, and I'm going to copy the path. So inside I've got that also on my right hand copy path. So we copy the path from there, we go into our task scheduler, and into there we paste our stuff. Now you see sometimes the slashes backwards rather than forwards, but it seems to work that way. So we go, okay, so we now have an action, so we're going to start a script. Now we need a trigger. So the trigger that we're going to have a new trigger, and we're going to say daily. So it recurs every day, and we're going to do it at 12:00 p.m. So it's going to start at midday. So we just got to make sure this is done on I'm just demonstrating this on a local one. I've got it on my server, so the server's running 24/7, so that's fine. On your one, if you've got to run it here. So we're going to run it on this schedule, and we're just going to do it there, Bob. The next thing that we've got to check through there. So we've got a trigger, we've got an action, conditions generally are those, but the settings, you also want to allow the task to be run on demand. Don't know if we want to run a new instance. No, not run a new instance. Stop the existing and run a new one. I think fiddle with whatever works for you. All I do is, because it's an email that happens every day, I just check every day to see if it works. So if I fiddle with something and it doesn't work, you can run with the highest priority, and also you can configure for Windows 10 through there. I'm not too sure how much that one. Now this isn't running that well for me on this PC. I've got it running on another one, and if we just run this one now, this is another thing I want to highlight through here. When I'm working, and I can use this one here to demonstrate that, when I'm working doing Python scripts, I actually open my VS Code in this top level, so that I'm able to go into this folder and work on this particular project. Then I can come into this one through here, and copy a file and move it across to the other one. So I'm just sort of jumping between things. I wanted an email script, so I've got one of those, so I go and grab it from there and put it into the other one, or I'm doing something or some things. So I find working at a higher level is good. The problem that happens there is that if we come into here, we are in there. If we enter here, I've got to put a path. So if I actually just give a path to where this one is, and I just do a copy path into there, you'll see I'm actually starting from Python working. So I've got to give this path all the time. Now when you're working in task scheduler, you're working, it starts off in the folder. So it's as if you've opened up your program inside the specific folder. So therefore, if you're writing to that folder, you don't have to give a path. So if I'm doing something, I've got this up on my server, and I end up copying across. Once I've debugged what I've got the few files that I'm actually working on, what I end up doing is I just put a hash into that one there, and then just put an empty one through there, and then that's set up to work. So it's just the way I prefer to work, so that I can actually jump between folders. So if I'm working in auto hotkey stuff, I've got a whole load of different folders doing lots of different things, but sometimes I'm snatching code from one thing to another. So it's not necessarily the most elegant way of doing it. It's just the way I prefer to work, and it works for me. Also, the other thing is I end up putting a lot of I try and automate the file naming, so that I've got the current date. So if you look at my dates, my my naming convention. Some of them can be a bit verbose, but you suddenly think, well, it's handy, you're not going to get mixed up by that, especially if you're repeating things daily. So you got one for the 4th, or you got one for the 31st of 3rd, or something like that, etc., etc., etc. You're not going to get confused, especially if you're doing something like an Epheremis, which on this one is either daily or a weekly thing, that you're actually making sure that you're clear on which files you're doing. Now, a lot of the times when I end up with a whole load of files, if I'm generating these daily, I end up with another subfolder called data that I push them into, so they kind of don't clutter up the main folder for stuff. So just be aware of that, and this is where, when I run something like this, it sometimes breaks. Now, this one here is running the script from my C drive that I'm using through there, and I think it's supposed to be writing to the C drive, but I don't think it does. But we'll run it and see. So let's just go and have a look in the C drive, and it doesn't seem to be there. And the other place where it sometimes writes to, I just do date modified, it's not in there either. So we'll see. Hopefully cancel, fingers crossed it'll run. And so if we run that one now, it's running the script. You can see that data being created, and then it's closed it down. So if we just go back into there and go into the Python working and into there, it hasn't turned up there, so I've got an issue. So just really from the point of view of a command line, this is an example. So it's running, it's going and finding, the first part is finding my Python exe file. So this is, I'm just running this one from a command line directly. And then it's running that script, and it's running the one from my C drive in the Python there. So when I run that one there, it's generated, and it's actually saying it's created the Ephemeris, but when I actually come up and go back into there, it's still not in. It's still not coming through into where it's supposed to be. So I can't, I've got a feeling it's a lot of the times when I have these issues, it's a pathing issue in that I'm actually pointing to the wrong directory. And that's why usually at the top of my scripts, I'll actually have the path directory right at the top of the file, so that I can remember to actually do something about it to make sure it's there. It's just because I've got all of these other, the fact that I want to get the current time or the current date to put at the beginning of the thing, the fact that I actually want the naming convention of who, no, that's the wrong one there, but good. So it's sort of easier to, I usually got it at the beginning of the file, like it's sort of in my face, but because of the fact that I'm getting all of these other things, I've sort of buried it in the wrong place in that one, so I'll just change that out and put it at the top. So just be aware, these scripts, they may have those pathing issues that you just need to go and sort out. So, but the process that I wanted to deal with here was one, to create an Epheremis, and then suddenly I thought I can adapt it so that you can use it anywhere in the world. You just need to change your lat long and your time zone. The next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to bring it from a CSV into a PDF in a tabular format, so that it was table and easily set out. Now, personally, I would, what's happened there? I'll start this one. Sorry, I got a bit confused there. Personally, I would like to have been able to put some vertical lines through, or some other smaller horizontal lines through the middle. So I may play later with actually making these lines at the top for the header and stuff thicker, but then actually being able to put thinner lines through. You know, I do like the zebra stripes things inside of Excel, and maybe, I don't know if it'll be able to do a vertical ones as well. And then also maybe put the time on the end column as well, so that you can read from either end, so that it's not as, you don't have to come all the way across to the left, especially if you're zoomed in quite tight. So it's a sort of a fiddle factor through there. And I've also got some of the margins are a bit the right hand margin. The left hand one's quite good, but the right hand one's a bit of a pain. I couldn't see that straight away. So overall, I'm very happy with the fact that I've got the process of creating a PDF into a table. I've got the Ephemeris. I can alter that for anywhere in the world, and it will give the daily stuff. It's done on a day. You can put it onto a task scheduler to actually create that task all the way through. You can also email it to yourself. So at the moment I've got the email as a separate script from the actual creating of the PDF. I might combine them into one, and then I'll actually most probably set it up to being at 12 o'clock, and I'll actually set that up for so that I actually get that email every day, so that I can do it. But I can also build ones for other people as well. So I hope you've found that. So this one it bothered me. I'm annoyed that I can't figure out where it's gone to. So I hope you've found that of interest, and use it for your own pleasure. Thank you very much for watching.